Hello, Browns fans. Welcome to another episode of the Dawgland podcast. I am Anthony Jokey. He is Jackson McCurry. We are here to talk, unfortunately, another Browns loss, this time 32-13 to the New England Patriots yesterday. The Browns are now headed into the bye week with a record of 2-6. Before we jump into the meat and negative of the podcast, let's start out with the positive that came out of yesterday, and that is the game that Myles Garrett had. Myles Garrett set a franchise record yesterday with 5 sacks, totaling his career sack number now up to 113 and a half sacks. That is now the most career sacks of a player before the age of 30. He passed Reggie White on that list. Jack, when we look at some of the greatest pass rushers of all time, Myles Garrett's certainly going to be mentioned in that echelon of talent. But unfortunately, with the loss yesterday, it kind of goes overshadow what he was able to do. But there's no doubt yesterday was a dominant day for number 95, who seems to have, these moments. I want to say it was his 20th multi-sack game, if I saw that stat correctly yesterday. So, a guy who is able to just absolutely terrorize the opposing quarterback, but unfortunately it wasn't enough yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it was simply a dominating performance by Myles, like you said, to break the record for most sacks under the age of 30, to break the single season game record, which he already held. I think he had 4.5 against the Bears a few years ago, and that was a dominating performance, but this one was right there with it. And it's unfortunate that, he such a dominating performance by him and the way the defense played in the first half, it was overshadowed again by another poor offensive performance. And you saw the frustration on him at the end. And he said it was because that New England was keeping their starters in when the game was already out of reach, and we had pulled our defensive starters. And you saw his frustration. He slammed his helmet, he screamed, and then he sat on the one end of the bench where the rest of the team was down the sideline. So, he's frustrated, although part of me, like, even though like I like Myles, I think he's the one of the greatest Cleveland Browns of all time. He he didn't have to be in this mess that we're in. He could have made it messy, could have forced his way out, but he chose to take the money. But like at the end of the day, he says most of the right things about his frustrations towards the team, and from that standpoint. But I mean, when you just look at yesterday, and he keeps climbing the all-time sack list for like not just he's already got the Browns record. He's now 38th on the all-time sack list, and he'll continue to move up that spot the rest of the season. Like he's in reach of passing Calais Campbell, who's still an active player, J.J. Watt, Simeon Rice, some of the all-time greats, and he just keeps climbing up that leaderboard. So to have such a dominant performance, which it's unfortunate that it had to come in a loss, and he's not the only pass rusher in league history, Anthony. I've seen 4 other guys have done it to have 5 sacks in a loss. But yeah, I mean, it's to see what he did against Will Campbell and the Patriots right tackle yesterday was just another astonishing moment by Myles Garrett and what will be a Hall of Fame career without a doubt.
Yeah, and there's really the other positive thing about this is when he has games like this, you see other guys around him. Like we saw Alex Wright have a good day yesterday, and it's just he means so much to that entire defensive line that whenever the other team has to really focus on him, and he's having a game like he did yesterday. The rest of the defensive line is able to, get these one-on-one matchups, and the talent that they have on the rest of the D line is very good, and they were able to get some pressure as well, and maybe force, Jake May up into the pocket and into the arms of Myles Garrett and put pressure on him as well. So, you know, he is such a special talent, and the fact that he's able to get sacks on his own, but the fact that he also creates plays for the other guys and vice versa this year. It wasn't like that last year where the rest of the defensive line was able to help him out. This year, it seems that the other 3 guys and the other guys that they rotate in as well have been able to make Myles even better at what he does.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's just a product of when you have an elite pass rusher like Myles, like guys are going to get looks. I mean, you mentioned Alex Wright had another good game, a QB hit, 3 tackles for a loss, a sack. Shelby Harris had 2 tackles for a loss. Who else was there? It Mohamed Diabate with a tackle for a loss. I think that's just you're going to get open looks when the focus is on Myles, and then they also have to pay attention to Wright and McGuire. They have to pay attention to Shelby Harris or Malik Collins inside or whoever in the interior, and guys are going to get open looks to make some disruptive plays. And I think that's just a product of going up against a guy like a Myles Garrett where teams have to double or triple team. You can't defend all 4 guys on the pass rush. If you're honing in on Myles, like guys are going to get tons of open looks. You've seen it throughout the early portion of the season. Malik Collins generating pressure, collecting sacks. Alex Wright, who's had some pretty good performances the last couple of weeks. Isaiah McGuire at the start of the season, the open looks he was getting. I mean, everybody's going to benefit off of Myles Garrett. We've seen it in the past. When they've brought in guys like Jadeveon Clowney, Zadarius Smith, Olivier Vernon. Like if you play opposite Myles Garrett or next to Myles Garrett, you can only benefit, and that's one of the benefits that the Browns defense has is guys have stepped up and contributed alongside Myles because of the attention that he receives.
I feel like that if this team was really good, you would have free agents wanting to come here to play on that defensive line, play on that defense because of how good it is and how good it can make you look playing next to a Myles Garrett like player. But unfortunately, right now this football team is not good, sitting at a 2-6 record heading into the bye week. And Jackie, it was more the same yesterday with the offense. Great first drive, able to go down, score a touchdown in the script that they had. But after that, it was, unfortunately what we've seen for the majority of the season, which was lack of a running game, not able to get the ball downfield, dropping passes. It just was a cluster yesterday, word in there in terms of this offensive output. And now you're sitting here questioning, all right, do we need to try another quarterback out of the bye week? Let's talk about Dillon Gabriel and what we've seen from him through these handful of games that he has started. Because granted, he threw 2 picks yesterday. Those were his first 2 turnovers, and his first 3 games he did not have one. So finally turned the ball over yesterday, had the intentional grounding that led to a safety. So theoretically, that was 3 turnovers that he had. And when you look at this Brown offense, it is struggling. When other teams are able to stack the box against the run, and Quinshawn, went out with an injury yesterday, and I think the only reason he didn't come back was because of the score. At that point, you just kind of sit him out. But when you are able to stack the box against the run, when you know the Browns are going to run it, and there's no legitimate threat throwing the football, your offense is going to struggle, and that's where they have been at. It seems like all season.
Yeah, I mean it's a combination of things. Offensively, it's Dillon Gabriel is regressing. He's not looking improved since his first start against Minnesota was his best start, and every week since it just seems like he has regressed. We talked about it last week. One of the good things that he had done was not have a turnover, and we knew it was coming just because he got into some serious good luck those first couple of weeks, like the Pittsburgh game, the Minnesota game. I think he almost threw an interception, and last week against Miami, there was a couple of balls that should have been picked off, and then lo and behold, this week it was that time ran out. 2 interceptions, like you said, like just bad luck there. No semblance of a running game outside of the Malachi Corley trick play where he gained 31 yards. He is a guy that looks like he is the Browns like gadget guy. They need to find more creative ways to get him the ball because he has been able to make a spark somewhat on the offense. That opening drive where he got the 31-yard rush on the trick play, it was beautifully drawn up and executed. But other than that, like Judkins gets shut down, like you said, and then he gets the shoulder injury, which they did confirm was a AC joint injury. So we'll see how he is coming out the bye week to see where he'll stand heading into Jets week. But yeah, I mean, everybody wants to talk about the receivers, and I think is it a product of them not attempting to get open? Yes, but I also think it's how it's schemed up. I mean, and when Mark Schlereth is calling it out on the game, like you have receivers running the same type of routes. You just got one guy a little bit deeper than the other. Like that's not good schematic football when you look at it. And God bless Isaiah Bond. He has no business being on the NFL field right now. It just seems like he doesn't do anything right. I mean, there's a reason why he was a mid-round pick. There's a reason why he was not projected to be drafted high, and then of course the legal troubles happened. But like like when he's one of your primary targets on offense, like that just shows you how bad your offense is right now. Like Jerry Jeudy, only 2 targets yesterday. He was completely disappeared. I mean, Jamari Thrash showed a couple moves yesterday, but like when he's your leading wide receiver, I mean, we won't even talk about the tight ends. When Jamari Thrash is your leading wide receiver, that's eyebrow raising. Like there's so much wrong with this offense. Nobody is imposing their will on offense from the line to the receivers or anything. Like it's all a complete mess. And who knows what the answer is? There might not even be an answer this year, Anthony, to fix it. Could they go to Shedeur? Yeah, but all the problems are still going to be there on the offensive side of the football. And this is one of those things where unless changes happen, and I don't even know if a midseason change would do it's any good at this point. It's hard to know that we got 9 more weeks of this because this has been some ugly ass football, pardon my language.
Yeah, but besides the defense, the rest of it has been pretty ugly, unfortunately. And the 3 leading pass catchers yesterday in terms of receptions were your 2 tight ends and Fannin and Njoku. Fannin had 6 catches, Njoku 4 catches. They combined for 99 yards, and then Dylan Sampson had 5 catches for 29 yards, and he was primarily in there in that fourth quarter late when the game was already out of reach, and Judkins was injured. So, there's nobody, it seems like, down the field, one, to get open. Two, it seems like at this point, Gabriel is being extremely conservative with the football and doesn't want to force anything down the field to, try and stretch out a defense to open things up in the running game. So it's just a combination of bad offensive line play, which it seems to have been a little bit better, but it's bad offensive line play. Receivers can't get open. You have a quarterback being extremely conservative. The play calling is extremely conservative, minus, Kevin trying to reach down into his bag of tricks with the few trick plays yesterday. It just seems like they're stuck. There's nowhere for this offense to go. I really think that, unfortunately, they're at their ceiling for this season with what they currently have, and you're just trying to play extreme ball control offense with running the football. Hope your defense keeps the other team under 16, 17 points to where you have a shot to, win the game by scoring, that around that. So it's unfortunately really bad football to watch offensively. You watch these other teams, score, it almost seems to be at will, big chunk plays all the time. Other teams, making their field goals, which we had a missed one yesterday after the Carson Schlesinger turnover, which would have, had us have the lead at halftime. This game was 9-7 at halftime, down by 2 points. Patriots come out, score 3 touchdowns in the third quarter, and we can't get a first down. So it's just really bad offensive football. And like I said, I think that unfortunately they are at the ceiling unless they make a quarterback change and, Shedeur blows you out of the water with what he's able to do in this offense.
Yeah, and it blows my mind You think back to what Stefanski's offense was a couple years ago, Anthony, and he would scheme receivers open. It didn't matter if it was Odell Beckham for that first year or so, Jarvis Landry, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Rashard Higgins, the tight ends, like guys would get open. And it's just, I don't know if it's the players are giving up or if guys that were on the coaching staff at the time were like the reason behind like receivers getting schemed open. I know it's not Chad O'Shea, which I am still shocked. It's 4:23 on a Monday afternoon, and Chad O'Shea is still the wide receiver coach. Like he has done nothing here in these 6 years, give or take a couple of guys like a Donovan Peoples-Jones or somebody who knows if he was even the reason behind it. He hasn't developed a receiver. The wide receivers look pathetic at times out on that football field. Like it just blows my mind that the offense that we saw at times 2020, 2021, 2023, it's not the same offense anymore. And I don't know if it's like Stefanski just isn't what we thought he was in terms of an offensive coach. If the personnel is just not up to par, like I don't know what the answer is to the problems, but when we watch it every Sunday, it's just like, how is this acceptable by the front office, by the ownership group? Like, the fans are livid. I can only imagine what the key decision makers in Berea are watching in their suites on Sunday. Like, it blows my mind that this is still going on, and it's year 6, and it just seems like we are continuing just to fall backwards.
At this point, there's the reputation of things not being stable in this organization. Changing head coaches constantly, changing GMs constantly, changing quarterbacks, which has still happened. But is it at a point where they are stable to a fault, and they've kind of pigeonholed themselves into a spot where they don't want to change for the sake of not wanting the reputation of as always making a change, but now they're afraid to make the change in a case where they need to based on where everything is currently.
I could see that, and I also feel like Jimmy Haslam is trying to give this group another chance after the Watson debacle. And he has said that publicly several times. He mentioned it again just this past week at the owners' meetings. I think it was to Diana Rossini. It was either to her or Ian
Yeah, that's
Rappaport.
really
I
too
forget where
Rossini.
okay. Yeah. So like I think he's trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it just seems like they are not making any progress. Like the rookies have had their flashes. Barry has been successful at trades. Obviously, like the Jerry Judy trade looked good last year. Doesn't look so good this year. But and he's had some hits in free agency. Malik Collins is another one. But when the quarterback position is still an issue, it doesn't look like there is a solid answer now. Who knows if there's a solid answer in the draft, even though, you know, we've been watching and we have our preferences. We might not even be in a position to get one as things stand now with us being currently slotted in at the fourth pick. Like Jimmy Jimmy's been obviously very patient with the uh whatever the chief strategy officer is. And I know some people will get mad at me for saying this, but we're in year 10 of Deep Podesta being in that role. You have 2 playoff appearances, 1 playoff win in 10 years. Everything else has been bad to below average. At what point do you move on to that and try something different? Like I know we've had several coaches in that span, several GMs, but at one point do you make a change and like try a different approach? Like not saying it's going to be successful because it's hard to trust the ownership group, but like it's hard to sit there and say we're giving these guys more time when they've had 6 years. So I don't know if they're afraid to make a change, but you've given this group 6 years and you wasted a potential Super Bowl window with some of the core pieces we had. I know you're trying to be patient and let like a new group come in to maybe start a new window, but at some point, like change has to be made. You can't just like sit out there. And if they win 2 or 3 games, or maybe win a couple more, and you're at what, 4 or 5 wins, how do you sell that to a fan base? How do you sell that to a fan base that you're trying to get people to buy PSLs for a new stadium that's coming? Like, it's all a big mess. I'm glad we don't have to be in this. Just make those decisions, Anthony, because it seems like it's a difficult process, so to speak, for the ownership group.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. And you talk about changes as we are entering the bye week. What, if anything, do you want to change when this team takes the field next against the New York Jets in 2 weeks?
Well, I already mentioned Chad O'Shea. Like, get somebody else in there to coach the wide receivers because I don't understand his purpose. Um, did they change a quarterback? I mean, at this point, we've seen 4 games of Dillon. I thought maybe he'd get a couple more. Stefanski seems like he's hell bent on sticking with Dillon. If his press conference today was any indication, it just seems like he doesn't even want to go down the road of playing Shedeur Sanders for some reason. Um, Offensive play caller, maybe? Like, do you let Tommy Reese call plays and see if that's any difference? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if anything could fix this. I don't know if we want anything to get fixed at this point. It just seems like we're all kind of ready for changes to come. Doesn't seem like it's going to happen mid-season, because if it would have happened, it'd be today. Um, but if I had to make any, maybe let Tommy Reese call plays and see what happens. Maybe give Shador the keys and see what happens. Like, could it get any worse? I don't think so. What do you think? Like, any changes could be that could salvage any of this mess right now?
Well, I don't. The trade deadline is a week from Wednesday. As it currently says, I don't expect them to, make any franchise altering moves in terms of acquiring talent. So I don't see any additional personnel coming in. Maybe an offensive lineman to, but not like a starter, just somebody to like back up, just so because we've had all these injuries. I don't see them making a trade for some of the wide receivers that rumored to be on the market, which Jerry Judy is rumored to be on the market. So I would hate to see what this offense looks like without your supposed best wide receiver. Um, there's guys like Garrett Wilson and Brian Thomas Jr. And AJ Brown that seem to be on the market. I don't see the Browns acquiring any of those guys at this point because of where they currently stand, and you probably want to keep your draft capital. I could certainly see some subtractions from this team. Shelby Harris, David Njoku, a couple of guys who, you lose them in free agency. Are you going to get a compensation pick for those guys if you're going to be active in free agency? So I, I I don't see, like I said, I don't see any franchise altering incoming talent. So we're pretty much stuck with what we have. And like I said earlier, I think we are at our ceiling at this point, and what this team is going to be this year, talent wise. Why not figure out what you have? And by that I mean, let's play Shador. If he's bad, he's bad, and if he's bad, you lose more football games. You're in a better position to draft a quarterback in next year's draft. You. I think at this point you have to figure things out for next year. You know, Granted, the division is still within grasp. You're only 2 games behind the Steelers, still playing the one game. It's just not going to happen with how this offense is, and I think that's one of the more frustrating things about the season. The entire AFC North has been in a position with all these injuries, unfortunately, the Browns included, to where you win week 1 against Cincinnati, you're a game behind the Steelers. You win that game against Minnesota, all right, now you have the same record as them. Like, there's certainly an opportunity to compete in this division this year, but the offense has been so bad that you are not able to be in a position to be at the top of the division. The Ravens start out 1-5 before winning yesterday. They now have 2 wins. So look, it's a tough spot to be in with this offense, and I'm all for just figuring out what you got, and if it doesn't work, then it puts you in a position to be in next year's draft and take a quarterback high, in those first few picks. If it works out, great. Then maybe you found your guy. But at this point, there's nothing that I've seen from Dillon Gabriel to convince me that he's even has the potential to be the guy. So let's figure out what the other quarterback has.
Absolutely. And not just the quarterback, like you mentioned, figuring guys out. Like I've been such a proponent of looking to see what Wyatt Teller has in trade value to let Zach Zinter or Tevin Jenkins play because they could be part of the future. Trading maybe Ethan Posick to see what Luke Whippler has because he's penciled in right now to be the center next season. Why not get a jump start on that? Um, yeah, you gotta see what you got because it's we're not I don't see us going anywhere. Like we got the Jets off the bye week. They won finally a game, so that could be a start of building momentum for them. Baltimore, like Lamar should be back here in the next couple of weeks. Like they could get hot because their schedule is relatively easy down the stretch. Then you got the Raiders, which that's a winnable game for us, but it's going to be in Vegas, going to be tough. But like at this point, yeah, like you're in evaluation mode. You're seeing what Shedeur's got. Maybe you give Gabriel another start or two, but like it's apparent that he's nothing more than a backup in this league, which isn't bad for him in his long term career, but that's not what the Browns are looking for. They're looking for the franchise guy. You see what Shedeur's got in the second half of the year, and then you keep scouting these quarterbacks in the draft, and maybe we're in a position to get one come next April.
Yeah, you would certainly hope that's the case if one of these two guys isn't the one you expect to be the starter long term. And I kind of feel like that was the plan all along. Was they weren't going to get the top guy that they wanted this year, and probably Cam Ward. So they made a trade down. They drafted these two guys. Maybe one of them you catch lightning in a bottle with, and he's your guy. But with where they are currently, I'm all for figuring out what Shedeur has at this point, and or what he doesn't have, and you know, moving on at that point. So we'll see what changes come here in the bye week, if any at all. We'll see if Andrew Berry decides to speak at some point. They said he's not going to speak this week, which is very interesting and curious to me. But maybe he's waiting till after the trade deadline next week to talk. So, you know, we'll see what this franchise has in store for us before we take the field against the New York Jets next Sunday or a week from Sunday. So, you know, it's unfortunately another rough bye week, and hopefully things don't get too worse around here. Like you said, we still have 9 more games of this for us to watch, and what kind of stinks about this season is, my season tickets. A lot of these home games are in the back half of this year, so unfortunately, it seems like it's going to be some more bad football as we get into the colder months downtown. So we'll see how that goes.
Yep, it's going to be a rough last couple months here for us. So maybe it's time to unload the draft content, Anthony. I think we've waited long enough. It's about time.
Yeah, we've been talking about it. We've been teasing it. Maybe we need to dive into our first mock draft here for this team, because we do have 2 first round picks. We finally have a first round pick again. For consecutive years that we're able to talk about. This year we have 2, so we can definitely dive into some draft content and have some fun with that, because I know you and I really enjoy doing that.
No doubt. And we're, like you said, we're in a good spot right now. We currently are at 419. There's some quarterbacks that are catching the eye for sure. So, as well as other impactful players, which there's one in Columbus that I would not mind seeing become a Brown next April. Hopefully, we're in a position to get him as well.
Well, there's about 3 that I would take in the first round from down in Columbus at this point.
Without a doubt, but there's an explosive playmaker that I would really
Yeah.
love to see in Columbus above them all. So
Yeah, I agree with that. All right. We are going to get on out of here. Be sure to give Jack a follow over on X at Jack McCurry08. Be sure to give me a follow at Anthony Jokey, Joki. Be sure to follow the Dawgland at the same handle on all social media platforms, which is the Dawgland. And until next time, we will talk to you all later, probably later on this week at some point, to kind of recap the season that has been so far and maybe start to unload some draft content as well. So until next time, always remember, go Browns.
go Browns.